Death Knights. They're like my favorite thing in all of World of Warcraft. And in this build here today, we're going to recreate a bit of an icy Death Knight build for Amon by combining a lot of really fun aspects of the build, some legendary mods, and pulling some really cool stuff from the Berserk trait in the Onslaughter tree. So if this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things is by upfronting the knowledge of my videos. So let me just kind of give you a down and dirty of how this build operates. We'll be using Scourge primarily, and we know that Scourge does, if I hover over this, it does cryo ordnance damage. Now, in addition to that, though, we're going to be using a legendary class mod called Shatterwhite. Now, Forgewave deals melee. So melee will, while Scourge for Cryo Efficiency radius, we don't care about that second part, just that first sentence. So our Forgewaves, which is whenever you whip the whip of Scourge, deals melee damage in addition to ordnance damage. So we can really ramp up a lot of the damage we're going to be doing here by doing ordnance damage increase right here. Now, whenever we deal ordnance damage, it will apply a cryo status effect. Cryo does not typically apply a status effect unless you have this passive. And you can see the damage here is 60% of damage dealt per second. It's pretty significant. But there's more to this. We're going to get cryo damage increased here, but this ability is going to help us out by giving us shield and ammo restoration whenever we apply a status effect. Cryo going to be that status effect that we're going to be applying. We'll be using Glacial Rupture, which basically turns you into Kratos. And then for our red tree, what we'll be focusing on, because of the rolls that I got on my legendary mod, we're going to be using Berserk. This is a big thing here because it gives us a bonus to cryo damage, gun damage, and melee damage. That's the most important part of Berserk. And if we get the thing right below it, there is only red, we're going to basically be able to keep Berserk up because it turns into a kill skill that will restore the duration by 9 seconds, which is half the, well, it's more than half the duration of Berserk. But the increased bonus damage will be 60% up to a max of 600. So this will allow our Scourge to rip through swaths of enemies. That is the focus of this build. It's what we'll be doing. That is the down and dirty of this entire thing. I'm going to put a link in the description below where it's going to have, this is just a skeleton of the build. Like I don't have it all filled out, but this will be completely filled out with explanations as to how I've chosen everything, why I've chosen it, when you're going to choose it. And we're going to break it down from a leveling standpoint and an end game standpoint in this video here today. So you can go ahead and check the build link out if you just want to look at that, if you don't want to go any further. As always, you know, this is my too long didn't watch it the entire thing. So if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down. I want to be respectful of your time. You can jump ahead to any part of this video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And if you are heading out and you found the information in this video helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. And like I said before, you'll find a link to my Mobalytics build for this and my Minion build and my Rafa build. Each one of those, I am a partner of Mobalytics. So helping or clicking those helps me out on the back end. Also, lastly, I stream on Twitch every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So go ahead and check me out on Twitch where I'll be streaming this and plenty of other games. Let's get started here on my icy Death Knight build for Amon in Borderlands 4. So the majority of this build, we will be doing cryo damage. And I want to talk about this up front before we get into the gameplay of the actual build so you understand this. Essentially, cryo efficiency is your likelihood, or not necessarily likelihood, but there's a hidden number that you have to reach to freeze an enemy. We're not really talking about or worrying about freezing. It's just kind of a nice additional thing. We're doing cryo only because we're able to stack it. I want to talk about it though, because that way you understand how it works. Your cryo efficiency will usually be proportionate to your rate of fire. So having a slow rate of fire like this, you will have a very high cryo efficiency. The higher this number, the less shots it takes to freeze something. By and large, it's going to be dependent upon the health of something, and you're going to freeze things around the same time you'd kill them anyway. Freezing things does give you something like a 250 or 300% damage bonus to melee, but it also does a damage bonus to any kind of explosion. So just be mindful of that. That's how that works. Like here's another weapon here just to give you some more context. This is a much faster fire rate, right? And our cryo efficiency is, rather than being 169, it is 108. So cryo is what we're going to be focusing on this build. And it is worth noting too how cryo works. It's very weak against shields, but it is strong against armor and normal against flesh. It's not the very strong of corrosive against armor, but it will get the job done. So let's jump into some gameplay and talk about this build before breaking it down and going through point by point. So this build is something that I created after getting the legendary mod that made it so forge waves do melee damage. And I wasn't sure how this build would really work. And to my surprise, it's just absolutely killer. And what we're doing with this build is using forge wave a ton. And you can see from the gameplay here, yeah, sure, I use my cryo weapons because they do get benefits to this, right? By using cryo weapons, we're taking in part in all of the increase to cryo damage we have innately into this build. But what we're really doing is using forge wave, going into scourge mode, bringing that shield up. We don't even need to charge the shield up, but we're just going to keep using scourge, spamming scourge. You're basically going to be like the Simon Belmont of Borderlands, constantly sending these waves. And since we're using the endless winter augment, every third wave we send is a bigger, larger, more massive wave that does more damage. And we'll show that off in the actual skill section of this. And the gameplay for this is pretty interesting. So my minion build, I was focusing on trying to do a lot of certain things with ordnance and action skills and forge skills. The forge skill for this is just kind of like a nice additional touch. We do the big, double whip slam, and it's just some additional damage. It's fun, but it's not necessarily the bread and butter of the build like the forge wave is. And now we can trigger off of anything else that does melee damage. So I'm using a grenade that does melee damage. I'm trying to take any kind of melee boosts I can in skills, in class mods, what have you. In addition to that too, I was always relegated to using grenades in my Amon minion build. And I say Amon like Amon Amarth. I know he pronounces it Amon in the game, but I don't give a shit. Amon is an elf word from Lord of the Rings. So what I really do like about that is I don't have to use grenades anymore. I can use all the really awesome ordnance section items that you have access to, right? To all the cool launchers, the Gatling guns, everything. And especially too, you don't need to make them frost, but if they are cryo-based ordnance weapons, they're going to do even more damage because we're scaling our ordnance damage. So you get to have a lot of fun with that slot and do a lot of cool things. Now, the one thing you do need to note though is you should probably have some form of shock weapon on. I have a shock weapon that I use, and I'll be honest, even when I'm just kind of blunt forcing through something's shields by using forge wave, I haven't found that I'm like, man, this is really stalling. I'm still doing chunks of damage to shields, so I kind of don't really care. Every time you use forge wave, it regenerates a little bit of the action skill duration, so you basically spam it and you're going to be using this thing damn near infinitely. And on top of it too, because of one of the skills we've chosen, these status effects that are applied by forge wave will replenish our shields and our ammunition. So it just puts us in a really good place to really be strong. And as we hit the end game stride of this build, in the beginning you won't take advantage of this, but as you kind of crest 38, 39, 40, you'll be able to take advantage of your forge wave delivering overshield for you. And that's around the time that you will find that you're going to start feeling very papery. You're going to start falling apart more. You're going to need to start really worrying about your shield generation. So you'll have plenty of that in this build. So that's the gameplay here. Let's now go through the breakout of how our skills are and what they're chosen before talking about both the rotation of this build and gear options. Jumping into the progression for this build, let's take a look at how this works. Now, a lot of this build is predicated upon you finding that legendary mod. Like I said, that legendary mod, I'm just going to go ahead and click down here. It is called Shatter White. Forge waves deal melee. I think I got it from a gold chest, but you could simply get this by rerunning the first boss a ton of times if you really want to do that, or rerunning any boss for that matter. Oh, no. I got this from doing the very first vault you unlock. The vaults have a higher chance of dropping class mods, and that boss has a higher chance of dropping legendary class mods. That is where I got it. So I recommend doing that, but you could also just the same do the very first boss over and over. This is all the legendary mods are generic in that they drop raw with this benefit, and then other things will get modified into them. I got lucky with how mine works because it plays into Berserk, but we'll talk about that when I go into the gear section. So that's kind of the first thing. You don't need it though until you jump into the red tree. So for right now, the first 25 or 26 levels of the build, you're just going to do this. So we're going to put 5 levels here into Scorched Kairos. Amon gains increased ordnance damage and magazine size. The ordnance damage is going to scale with our Scourge. Remember how Scourge works, right? It equips a Forge Shield that absorbs all frontal damage as Vengeance. Whenever the Vengeance meter is filled, Forge Shield provides damage reduction instead. Vengeance drains rapidly if it has not been regained recently. Press action skill to launch a Forge Wave, dealing Cryo Ordnance damage. Those three words are the most important portions of this build. To enemies it passes through, consuming Vengeance to increase damage dealt. This thing is going to stay active, so we don't need to really worry about it. So as we're leveling up though, we'll go ahead and turn on Blast Chill because it just kind of plays into the early portions of this build. So go ahead and do that. After that though, we're going to make sure we get Tail of the Comet. So whenever we deal ordnance damage, we now apply a Cryo status effect. Cryo natively does not apply a status effect. This allows us to apply a status effect. And that means that whenever we use Forge Wave, it's a status effect. Whenever we use a grenade, it does a status effect. So it's whenever you deal ordnance damage, period. Doesn't matter if it's cryo ordnance or not. So we get to take advantage of that. So we apply this and it will do 60% of damage dealt per second. Very good. We're going to take a flat increase to our cryo damage at 30%. And then as we come down here, we're going to swap off Blast Chill for Eternal Winter. So now Forge Wave rapidly restores action skill duration and firewall duration on damaging enemies. So as long as we're doing Forge Wave and hitting something, it's going to return action skill duration for us. And then the third activation launches a massive Forge Wave that deals increased damage, does not consume Vengeance. So that third one here, you can see has a massive Forge Wave damage is 673. So, and every time we hit, we get action skill duration restore of 2.5%. So that's why we really like that right there. Also too, our Forge skill is going to be Firewall. I have not tested what that is like using this leveling up, because by the time I flexed into this build, I already had the capability to get to Glacial Rapture. So it's just your mileage may vary on how that performs for you. Now we're going to put 5 levels here into Icy Rage. Killing an enemy with cryo damage, which we're going to do plenty of, will grant us a stack of cryo affinity for a duration. Those stacks increase our gun damage by 6.25% per stack, up to 5 stacks. So for the sake of easy math, it's 30% per stack. Or I'm sorry, 30% total increased gun damage if we get 5 stacks of this, which is going to be quite easy. Now, as far as our sustain goes, you're going to start reaching around a point, this is level 21, you're going to start reaching a point where you are starting to suffer with your sustain. Here's where we get Primal Surge. Whenever Amon applies a status effect to an enemy, now any status effect, it doesn't need to be from this specifically, which is our ordnance damage, but if you're using a shock weapon, an incendiary weapon, or a corrosive weapon, it will give you status effect here, which will then give you shield restoration of 15% and ammo restoration of 30%. It's a 25% chance for that to trigger though, so we like that a lot. And our capstone is going to be Glacial Rupture here. It's just 2 big hits of cryo ordnance damage. It's just fun. It plays into how the build works, and we just get it because we're already going that hard in the paint. So this is the leveling portion of the build. Let's now break this into the end game version, which is pretty much just putting the next 23 points into Onslaughter. I would say level 30 is quote unquote the beginning of the end game. Actually, level 50 is the end game, right? But like, I would say level 30 is roughly when you should have completed the campaign. Maybe not. I don't know. I haven't. But let's jump now into the end game. So into the end game, we're just going to take benefits on the things that we're already really doing. So our first one here is Amon gains increased max shield capacity and max overshield capacity. This is nothing is necessarily going to trigger this yet, but as you kind of push into the 30s, you're going to start feeling that this is going to give you a ton of advantage. Now we're going to also do Amon gains increased status effect damage up to 30% on this, and status effect duration. So the status effects that we're applying via the ordnance damage is now being applied here. Now there is a little bit of dealer's choice that you can do from this point forward. There is this one, Gut Punch. So when a melee and ordnance damage have a chance to apply weakness to enemies for a duration, weakness or weakened enemies deal reduced damage and take increased damage. A weakness is affected by status effect duration and self-considered a status effect. So you can play a lot with this. This is one that really you can have a lot of fun with, and you put 3 points in because only 3 points allowed, and then you can flex around. You can do that if you want. Another one is this. This is just a straight up damage buff. Amon gives you increased melee and skill damage, 35% melee, 15% skill damage. And lastly, your other kind of wild card choice is the best defense. Amon gains overshield whenever he deals melee damage. So if you are struggling to stay alive, go with this. If you really want to do more damage, go with this. If you want to do a little bit more damage and maybe get a little more survivability, you could do this. That way you're going to get 6% per time you do melee damage. So this is a reliable amount of overshield. It's not a ton, but you can get a lot of melee damage turned on, and this can trigger quite a bit for you. Or you just, sink 5 into it. This is entirely dealer's choice. You have 5 points, however you want to spend them to get now down to Berserk. So when Amon, what the hell? Whenever Amon activates his Forge skill, which is Glacial Rapture, he becomes Berserk for a duration, getting slow immunity and bonus crowd damage with gun damage and melee damage. So just remember, that is a Forge skill that he has to use, not his action skill. That will then make you Berserk. So that is why we're going to use Forge skill, just is a chance to send us into Berserk, which gives us bonus crowd damage. And then we use There Is Only Red to give us stacks here. 3 more points into this. So Berserk, once you pretty much want to open up a fight with your Forge skill and then use your action skill, because what you're going to do from that is you're going to kill tons of things, and it's going to ramp your damage up disgusting amounts. This is going to make it so every time you kill something, it's going to restore 9 seconds of duration to Berserk. Berserk is a 15-second thing, so this is going to recover it in 2 kills pretty much. And it's going to increase the bonus damage you get to a max of 600%, because Berserk gives us increased cryo damage, gun damage, and melee damage. I promise, as you hit the end game with this, once you just kind of get into Berserk, you're going to find that this thing gets really disgusting very fast. And you're going to feel that in the later 30s before you even get into the 40s and level 50. So you'll have a lot of fun with this build before even reaching true quote unquote end game. So what we want to take a look at too are specializations. Now I've focused on Gadgeteer, just 1 point here, or I'm sorry, 10 points into Daredevil and 1 point into Runner. Choose these as you see fit, right? Take the advantage of the ones that you like most for what you're trying to really focus on in the build, or what you're enjoying the most out of the build. A lot of these just pull the same exact benefit into different things, and that's gun damage. Melee damage now benefits from increased to gun damage, which is going to increase everything else. Or this is ordnance damage now benefits from increases to gun damage, which is everything else. Or this one, and I think this is the most important one. So 10 points into Daredevil is what I'd go with first. Action skill damage now benefits from increases to gun damage. Remember, gun damage is increased through Berserk, and Berserk is triggered through Forge skills, which then leads us to an unlimited time and destruction on our action skill. So this at a 600% bonus to that. So let's just factor 300% is probably the max it's going to be because of this. That's 300% additional action skill damage. It's a lot. It is a crap ton. So we focus on that. And you can just put 1 point here into Runner to get this for melee damage bonus. And this last one here is Ordnance gains a chance to critically hit enemies and also gains increased Ordnance critical hit damage. This one isn't too crazy for me. There's a lot of other ones, but like there's stuff like the status effect ones. Where are they? Here. Critical hits grant increased status effect application chance. We're not worrying about that. We're going to, we apply so much status effect that we don't need to worry about the chance of it. And there's another one here. Enemies take increased damage for each status effect applied to them. We're only applying 1 status effect. I've yet to be able to test if this means that applying the same status multiple times gives us this percentage. So I'm unaware of that. So if you know, let me know in the comment section below. With the rest of these two, melee damage grants the Vault Hunter increased fire rate for a duration. We're not necessarily using our gun when we are taking advantage of this, which is just sort of using the action skill. So if you have other specializations you think would be better for this build, again, let it be known in the comment section below. I've yet to play much with specializations. I only have a limited time at level 50. The rest of the time has been spent coming back up to that. So I will have to test this more and more, and I will update it on the actual build once I've set something a little bit more in stone. But we've gone through the build. We've shown off some gameplay. Let's talk very quickly about the rotation. For the rotation here, you're going to play however you want leading up to the time that you want to start, really kicking ass. You can use a cryo-based weapon if you want, whatever it is, but you want to open up with this. And you're going to notice that in the lower left here, right next to my shield, I am in Berserk. You can see those things on the left and right sides of the screen. That means I'm in Berserk as well. And then we activate our Forge, our skill, and we just do this. That is it. It's not restoring right now because we're not killing anything, but if I was killing something, that would be restoring the action skill duration. Conversely, if I just hang out here, I will take damage into this. Vengeance. which will then increase the damage of my forge wave. But that is the gameplay loop. Now, obviously, what you've just seen right here doesn't show a lot. From the gameplay, you saw how I was perpetually just pretty much using this thing, mixing it and gripping it. Originally, too, I was doing the build wrong. I was leaving damage on the table. A lot of the gameplay you have taken a look at, I'm not even using Berserk. And that was already devastating gameplay. So you want to open up with the forge skill. Then you want to use your action skill, and you want to be going ahead and spamming those whips constantly. Conversely, too, once your action skill is up, and if you want to build Vengeance, Vengeance will build very, very, very quickly. You just pretty much need to let someone hit you. But you can, I'll go over here, there should be someone up at this little hut. And this is what I call pod racing. Let's go ahead, here we go. So we'll go ahead and pop this. We go into action skill, and we just do it. But I could just stay here and let them shoot, and you'll see my vengeance meter going up right above the action skill, right? And then we just kind of keep going to town and stuff. And that's how that works. That is the build in a nutshell. It's super straightforward, super easy, and this is the Endless Winter big one. It'll be a long, horizontal, bigger forge wave that'll come out. It'll be diagonal, across diagonal, and the big horizontal. But that is essentially the entire gameplay. Outside of that, though, you'll be pretty much just shooting things with cold weapons to do additional crowd damage, or using any of your other weapons that you'll need to. So let's talk about that through gear. Now, with the gear here, the only legendary we need is, of course, the Shatter White. Let's go ahead and go look at this. This is the only thing that is guaranteed to roll on Shatter White. I believe the crowd damage does roll as well. I think that's kind of innately built into it. So this is the biggest gain here, right? Melee attacks while Scourge is active gain increased cryo efficiency and radius. So that's a big, huge gain to it as well. That's also innate. And we have ordnance cooldown rate 15%. Gadgets Ahoy gives me an additional ordnance cooldown rate of 15%. If I had to get this 2 more times, I'll be just screaming through ordnance damage. Remember, ordnance is the biggest thing because that's what forge wave keys off of. This also gives me 2 stacks of Berserk. That was a big thing here that I wanted for the build. Northern Wind is active in this build. It's really not really a good skill, but just to kind of show you for continuity's sake. What am I doing? Who am I? Gandalf? You're our king, sir. There we go. Northern Wind. Amon's gun critical hits have a chance to apply additional slow to enemies as if dealt crowd damage. It's just kind of whatever, so I don't necessarily worry about it. Now, outside of that, though, our other gear options, I'm actually using Slippy, which you can fish up anywhere in the game. As long as you just go do fishing, you can get it. This dropped from a gold chest for me, and it does Swordfish, deals melee damage on detonation. It's not going to deal a ton of damage, but what does this do that I really like? The biggest thing here is that this is going to trigger this capability. No, it doesn't. This one. Amon gains overshield when he deals melee damage. So that throwing one of those grenades just generates overshield for me. In addition, anytime I swing this, it generates overshield for me. And also, remember, I'm from that same exact thing, Primal Surge, or from Tail of the Comet, it's going to be doing ordnance damage, which is going to be a status effect, which is going to provide me with shield restoration and ammo. So a lot of stuff here. I'm getting shields, I'm getting ammo, I'm getting overshield from all of these different sources. But you can find those things on different grenades. This is what I wanted to choose. You don't need to choose it. You'll be just fine without it. Outside of that, though, make sure you get like a really nice cryo sniper rifle. They really just, I think personally, like they really hit home with how this build works. I've really enjoyed using this one. It's the only time I like an order weapon is if it's a sniper rifle. So an order sniper rifle with cryo is going to have a disgusting amount of DPS, and it's really going to help out how this build performs. Now, another thing you're also going to want to take advantage of is some sort of weapon that has shock. You can also, I got lucky, this has shock and corrosive, but I just use the shock. And even then, I don't necessarily feel like I have to use the shock to perform at my best. I use the shock when I'm fighting any kind of really big boss because I want to eat that shield up as fast as I can. This does it for me. And then if that thing's got shields or armor, remember, cryo does strong against armor, not very strong. So at least it's going to eat that armor up, and it does normal damage to flesh. So I'm going to be able to do quite a bit of damage with just my cryo capabilities. Outside of that, really play this however you want. Firmware options can be stuff like this for ordnance cooldown. I've got this one for action skill cooldown rate. I don't know how the hell you even get that one, but firmware doesn't really come into this as much as I really want it to. I don't really worry too much about it, but those are a lot of the ways that you're really going to get this build to cut off the ground, by using crowd damage that you're already stacking up into and having some sort of shock weapon, but making sure also you've got that legendary class mod. But at that, it brings our build here to a close. And we've covered one particular way of doing this build. And please play the build however the fuck you want. Take things from this build and jam it into another build. Remove all the points I put into Onslaught and put them all into Scourge, and go crazy with other portions. Dip into Shock if you want. I originally had this as a Shock build that also goes into Berserk, but I figured that really didn't work out too well, and I just doubled down on Cryo, and it's been an amazing work. So play with this how you see fit. See that my builds, I really want you to use them more as a guide on a way to approach the game versus, hey, this is Creed. If you don't play like this, you're just not good. Like, I'm not even very good. So play with this, see how you like it. I think if you are in your 30s and you're struggling to wake up every day, I mean, wait, what? If you're in your 30s and you're struggling with your current Amon build, give this one a shot. That class mod is not too hard to find. You might already even have it in your bank. And this is a really fun one to use with it. I've got another legendary class mod, so let me know if you want me to do a build using the red tree for Amon. I want to use that class mod and really jump into incendiary damage and see what I can do with it. So let me know in the comment section below. And also let me know what other characters you want to see builds for. I'm working on a Harlow build that is a big nuking build. I have a Rafa build as well that's already corrosive. You can find that in the description below. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.